Friends and colleagues, thank you for joining us today. I think we are already at the hour, so let's start our conversation for today. So good morning, so good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome and thanks for joining us today for the fifth edition of the Resilient Urban Systems webinar series, jointly led and organized by UNDP and UNDRR. Climate change has added new dimensions to known hazards and existing risks, while creating quite a few newer ones. And of course, cities have been pitted on the front lines of these challenges. One of the major effects of global warming has been in the form of record-breaking temperatures with increasing incidence of heat waves. Over the past years, extreme heat events have been responsible for increasing mortality as well as widening socioeconomic impacts in the form of loss of life, health issues, water shortages, wildfires, loss of livelihoods, economic productivity, power outages, and other adverse consequences. Extreme heat events are linked to several health impacts like heat strokes, dehydration, and pose a higher risk for infants and the elderly. UNICEF has warned that over 2 billion children around the world would face frequent heat wave effects by 2050. It is projected that extreme heat events will increase in intensity, frequency, and duration in the future compared with historic levels. In cities, heat gets trapped, resulting in what we know as urban heat islands. Given the peculiar built environment of cities and the urban spaces, the heat island effect gets aggravated due to the high proportion of built-up areas and infrastructure, and in the absence of adequate natural buffers or environmental exhausts. With the intense unprecedented heat waves affecting increasing number of countries and cities, including in the Northern Hemisphere, the need to build a resilience to heat waves and heat island effects, particularly for the most vulnerable communities, has been highlighted. In this regard, the potential offered by digital technologies and innovation can be used to assess, understand, analyze, disseminate timely information and advisories, support interventions to mitigate the heat wave and heat island effects, while also helping devise cities of the future with an inherent ability to address the challenge posed. Recognizing this existing and emerging risk, UNDP and UNDRR are organizing today's webinar as part of the Resilient Urban Systems webinar series to focus on building the resilience to heat waves and urban heat island effects. In today's webinar, we have experts and practitioners from across a wide range of stakeholders, and will touch upon issues related to building community resilience, application of GIS and digital tools, while also learn about the interventions being advanced in the cities of Incheon and Athens in this regard. This will help us benefit from their experiences, but also learn about what has worked and how this local action has set a valuable guide for us to follow and implement in our respective areas. Before inviting and introducing our learned panelists and speakers for today, let me first of all turn to my colleague Andrew McElroy, who works with UNDRR and is MCR 2030 coordinator, for some initial remarks to set the stage. May I invite Andrew, please?
Great. Well, thank you very much, Rajiv, and a really big welcome to all of you from around the world connecting for today's webinar. As Rajiv said, it's the fifth in our series on building urban resilient systems. And how timely it is to have this focus on heat waves just a few days at the conclusion of COP28, which of course highlighted so many of the challenges that we face, but also some of the ways forward in terms of both national and local government action and ambition on climate risk reduction. And I think COP28 really showed us that this is the time that global policymakers fully understand that local governments, subnational authorities really are, as Rajiv said, on the front line, not just of the challenge, but in terms of the opportunities that we have. And that window of opportunity is really quite narrow and closing with their national government colleagues and various civil society actors that really step up the action and ambition on climate resilience, particularly in terms of heat waves, as we're discussing today. Just 6 months ago, the United Nations General Assembly issued the political declaration, articulated their deep concern about the pace and the equality of implementation of disaster risk reduction actions around the world, and they really highlighted the urban context as one of the areas that really are very important as we move into the second half of the agenda for sustainable development, and indeed the Paris Agreement. So we at Making Cities Resilient 2030, we see our role of connecting the experience of one city to another, of sharing with our global network what works and also what perhaps doesn't work, is really a critical contribution to this effort to manage heatwave risk and climate and disaster risk in general. So with those few words, just to say, from Making Cities Resilient, we now have more than 1,640 local governments from around the world, representing a combined population of 534 million people. We also have 30 national governments, 11 national municipality associations, and many partners from academia, private sector, and civil society as part of our network. So we're really in it for the long term, and we're very happy to have such an impressive lineup of speakers to share their perspectives, their wisdom and insight with us today. So on behalf of MCR 2030, I'll hand back to you, Rajiv, and I look forward to the next hour's discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Much appreciated. Thanks, Andrew, for underscoring the importance of coordinated action for urban resilience, and the activities being advanced by a range of partners under the MCR 2030 banner are truly helping cities to shift gear towards a greater focus on resilience building. The significant number of cities coming forward to take action and integrate resilience within their day-to-day functioning is quite encouraging, as evidenced by the growing number of cities working to be recognized as resilience hubs. And of course, the importance of focusing on the urban context to realize the ambitions of the overall 2030 agenda, while of course, specifically on the Sendai framework too, has been truly underscored in the midterm review of the Sendai framework too. So with this opening segment, let me quickly turn to our erudite lineup of speakers today. So in the first instance, I would like to invite Ms. Aynur Kadiha Sanoglu, who is Senior Urban Specialist in IFRC's Climate Center and the Global Disaster Preparedness Center. Her work focuses on building resilience of urban communities to the coastal threats and extreme heat. She will be sharing her insights on building community resilience through awareness, advocacy, and engagement. Over to you, Ms. Aynur, for the next 12 minutes for your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or maybe good morning for some of you. And thanks for having me, Rajiv and Andy. I will start with, in the spirit of the title of this series, Urban Resilience, I will start with maybe briefly explaining what is our vision and approach to urban resilience as the Red Cross Red Crescent Network. As probably when you think about Red Cross Red Crescent work, you mostly think about maybe disaster response, but we in over 190 countries, we have thousands of branches, and most of them are in cities, and we are doing a lot of work in building resilience of urban communities, in addition to all the work we have been doing. Because we know the future is urban, we know, like you said, Rajiv, and the cities are being affected by climate change and by other disasters quite a lot. And we are, I think most of you are very well aware of that. So And as a community-based organization and network, we are very good at engaging with communities. We have tons of experience and tools. But when it comes to urban communities and working in cities, we do realize that that is not enough. That is super important, yes, engaging with communities, but we understand it's not enough. We need to get better in understanding the systems of cities and engage at the city level, sometimes national and even international level for some of the cities. And how do we do that? We do that, we develop a new methodology, and we have tested this methodology that I will talk about in a minute in 3 countries in Asia, and now we are expanding it to 9 cities in 4 countries: Honduras, Indonesia, Tanzania, Bangladesh. So this is about really connecting communities with the local governments, whether it's a municipality or a state administration or whatever the urban governance form is in that city. And we work mainly in secondary cities, connecting these communities with the urban governance systems and other systems, and to build community resilience coalitions. And these coalitions are co-led by the local Red Cross, Red Crescent branch and the local government. This has been proved to be a really working mechanism. The coalition model is very flexible, very porous model, right? It's not about partnerships. Nobody's signing anything. We just try to engage with these stakeholders at that level and get their commitment through creating a shared vision, through creating a space where everyone can collectively discuss, prioritize their problems, understand what the future risks are, this unpredictability of climate change, the impacts, and come up with some solutions. And from our perspective, the solutions are much bigger, right? In an urban space, the solutions has to be at a systemic level. The solutions have to be transformative. Otherwise, it's really hard to have any impact in an urban space. We understand that, but also without the community perspective, without their engagement, without their voices, it is also extremely difficult to create a viable, sustainable urban future. I think this is something that I would like to really emphasize, that we really have to make that connection. And that's, in a nutshell, our approach. But I will now talk a little bit more about how we are responding to extreme heat. And as a small note, everything I talk about, all the tools, experiences, you can find them in our kind of knowledge repository, preparecenter.org. I'll put it in the chat. I will try to put more links if needed, but you can find all the tools that I talk about in this little small conversation. So when it comes to extreme heat, I think Rajiv and you, Andy, mentioned that the heat island effect is really, really important. And heat is also very local. Even in a city, different communities, different people are affected very differently. So we have to first understand that. But I want to maybe speak on 3 main topics. One is the impact, perception, and awareness around heat. The second one is this city heat action plans that we're working on. And the third one is anticipatory action towards heat. So to start with the impact and risk perception, that is one of the biggest barriers that we find out. We had done research last year in 13 countries, in low and middle income countries, about to understand what are the risk perception and knowledge level. That also proved that the level of understanding heat as a risk is very, very low. That's a huge barrier. And I'll give you an example. It's Indonesia, Medan and Surabaya is 2 cities that we are working on in extreme heat. And in Indonesia, heat is not officially accepted as a risk. It's not in the country's disaster management system or the disaster risk management literature. So that was the first barrier we came across. And what we did was there is data, like when you even remote sensing, remote data, you can get this data, and once you get this data and show an analysis, it clearly shows a trend. But this is very common in very hot and tropic climates. Heat is not accepted as a risk, but it is a risk, and impact is increasingly being felt. Numbers are telling us. When you look at numbers, it is very, very clear. So this risk perception is huge, and there's a huge knowledge barrier also in terms of understanding the impact. Like what does heat do, actually extreme heat to people? Not just people, I mean, huge impact is on people's health, obviously, but it actually impacts the city infrastructure as well. I'm not going to touch upon that part, but a huge impact. So we need to quantify and show this. That's one thing we are doing as Climate Center and Global Disaster Preparedness Center, doing research, try to show this impact. So what do we do with this risk perception? Is the next phase is that we use this information, we understand what people are. There are also a lot of misconceptions, by the way, a lot of myths around, like against heat, how to protect. And we are going to publish a new tool about these myths, and we try to make it as like an online quiz. Hopefully we'll get attention. But when we did that research, we found that there's a lot of wrong information about heat. How does it affect, or how to protect yourself? So using that perception studies and understanding it, we develop heat campaigns, local campaigns led by Red Cross, Red Crescent, usually right before the heat waves hit or during the season. That is also very important. But again, these campaigns has to be very, very local, contextualized. Like that's why we are suggesting always do a heat perception study. That's very, very interesting. And just as a really interesting thing is that we've been doing this Heat Action Day globally. Now, June 2nd, this is going to be 2024, will be the third year. Our aim is to make it a globally accepted day, Heat Action Day. The last 2 years, we have done it only through our Red Cross, Red Crescent network. Using this opportunity, I would like to invite everyone to find out. I'll put the link in the chat and join us. This year, we are going to work with ICLE and mobilize the cities as well. What we do is we usually come up with a team, and everyone, every city, every community does something around that team during that day. So these Heat Action Day concepts, if it becomes global, maybe we can think about doing it differently in northern and southern spheres because of the differences. But so far, it's only in June 2nd. So we invite everyone, please find out and join us. So this is, again, risk perception, understanding impact, and doing information campaign is an attempt to really close this huge knowledge gap and understanding what heat means, what does it do to us. Since we don't have much time, I'm going a little bit fast, but hopefully I will be able to clarify if there are any questions later. The other thing that as Red Cross, Red Crescent we are doing is that working with, again, local governments, city stakeholders, and also meteorological agencies in the countries that we are working in, develop heat action plans. I know that a lot of cities are also developing these heat action plans, which is a great development, obviously, but doing this developing these heat action plans with the communities is the difference. Like we bring the communities' perspective there because they are the ones impacted, and usually the most vulnerable ones, the ones that has less access to air conditioning or other cooling systems, are the most affected, but they are usually not part of these city systems officially, a lot of places. So we are trying to bring these together so that they can develop locally appropriate actions. So these city action plans is another thing that we are working on. Again, another attempt to connect the city and national authorities with the communities and create an action that is actually appropriate to the context. All of these tools and examples you can find in the link that I shared. Okay, just one thing I want to mention is anticipatory action. So heat wave is a great example of a successful anticipatory action because you can predict. I mean, obviously we know when heat waves are going to hit, how severe it will be, but preparing ahead of time is an excellent way of using this anticipatory action forecast-based financing model that we have, because although the impacts are severe, it is relatively very easy to prevent illness and death when it comes to heat. I'm not talking about the systemic changes. Of course, it takes much bigger effort, but just checking on your neighbors, checking on people who live alone in isolation, make sure that they are hydrated, they distributing water, creating cooling centers, maybe community-driven planting or shading some of the busy cities. There are very low-cost tons of actions you can do, and Red Cross, Red Crescent volunteers are excellent in doing that. So we are mobilizing communities and helping communities to reduce the impact a lot ahead of heat waves. Another example is maybe helping some of the workers, outdoor workers, financially, maybe some small cash distribution, because if we advise them to not be outside, don't be in the outdoors, but they are losing their livelihoods. So we need to kind of come up with solutions that will help them. So these are some of the examples that we are mobilizing communities, but again, also more importantly, connecting with the city systems and local governments. And I will stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ayanur. Excellent, points and thoughts, for us to deliberate upon. Thanks for flagging the need that we need to better understand, what we mean, communities in an urban context.
Mm-hmm.
What do we understand, when we say in urban systems? So taking more like a whole of government approach, and of course the need to engage different, segments of urban, population to develop a shared vision. We are already in a paradigm where, we have a situation of shared risks and shared vulnerabilities across all, typologies of risks. And it's obviously imperative that we develop that shared vision and a shared approaches to address many of these risks and challenges. Of course, thanks for, highlighting the three-pronged approach that you and your organization are taking. I think it excellently, well organized and structured. That first, that we need to understand and assess those, what the impacts are, how aware we are. Do we recognize that as a risk at all? I think it was really a surprise to know that it is still not recognized as a risk across countries. The need to develop some action plan to address this, because it cannot be just on and off, work that we do. And of course, need to take anticipatory actions. So pre-warned is obviously prepared. So thanks a lot, for excellent points, and also telling us about the Heat Action Day on 2nd June. We will look forward to it and join your efforts and your partners' efforts in this regard. So thank you so much for your time today.
Sure.
With this, I would also like to request our participants that you can continue to share your questions in the chat box, or otherwise keep it ready with you. Once we come to the question answer session, then we'll take them up. So with this, moving on from community-centric action towards technology applications, let me invite Ms. Sarah Venturini, who is Climate Change and Biodiversity Coordinator with the Group on Earth Observations, it's GEO, based in Geneva. GEO works in close collaboration with WMO and other UN entities to support the advancement of action on UN SG's Early Warning for All Initiative 2, and the focus on heatwave resilience is part of the efforts in that direction. Ms. Sarah will be speaking to us about the Global Heat Resilience Services and the index that their team has developed, which has supported application of GIS tools to map heat waves and their impacts. Over to you, Ms. Sarah, for the next 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen.
Please.
Okay. So, good day, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I work at GEO Secretariat. And for those who don't know much about GEO, I have some introduction for you. GEO is an intergovernmental organization that draws expertise from an extensive network of governments, 115 governments, 170 private sector and civil society organizations, and thousands of world-leading scientists. The GEO Secretariat, as mentioned, is hosted by the World Meteorological Organization in Geneva. And for almost 20 years, we have been promoting open knowledge and Earth observation data transfer and use to tackle global challenges. We are the ones who broker the open data policy that national space agencies around the world have adopted since 2008, when the United States opened up their satellite imagery repository. Many other countries follow suit. And last November, our ministers came together to endorse GEO's new strategy that speaks to the concept of Earth intelligence. So what does it mean? It means that from data infrastructure and data sharing, we are now moving towards more operational services with augmented capabilities based on Earth observations. And GEO, as mentioned, is an implementing partner of the UN Secretary General's Early Warnings for All initiative that aims to ensure everyone on Earth is protected by climate hazards by 2027. And of all the hazards, we are focusing on heat resilience because, well, first of all, it's happening and we see it every season. More specifically for us, it's a nexus area of interest for our community, and we can tap into many individual initiatives that we already have in our work program. Also, there is a value add from Earth observation data in understanding better climate risk and improving early warning systems, thus contributing to SDGs in general. So why must we act now? Well, I don't have to convince you, but this slide is pretty important because children born in 2020 have almost 7 times more chances to be exposed to extreme events than that of a person born in 1960. This is impressive. And the science is clear about the link between climate impacts and urbanization. Climate change is projected to significantly increase population exposure to heat waves and heat-related morbidity and mortality, as IPCC says. Heat is growing, a health risk due to urbanization, an increase in high temperature extremes and demographic changes in countries with aging populations. Also, we know that there are strong geographical differences in heat-related mortality, and these are projected to emerge later this century, mainly driven by population growth and aging in regions with tropical and subtropical climate. And as we know, half of the world population lives in cities and urban areas, and an additional 2.5 billion people are projected to be living in urban areas by 2050. So much of the burden of urban heat exposure is concentrated in the south, in Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America. And these are also locations where urbanization is rapid, urban governance is weaker, and technical capabilities and data availability much poorer. So in cooperation with WMO, this year we started to co-design a service that will provide every urban area in the world with data and knowledge on the health risks from exposure to extreme heat. And these insights will help cities to develop plans to adopt heat and reduce the impact on citizens' health and local economies. How did we identify the need for this? We did a global survey as well for cities. And we got a number of useful insights. I'm not going through all of them, but this is quite interesting. For instance, we learned that data and evidence about extreme events is actually there. It's not what is missing, but it's not always ready for policymakers to use. The main perceived gap is about the lack of heat policies and regulations, which is an essential requirement to respond to extreme events. Therefore, our prospective global heat resilience service is not there. We are still designing it. Will help cities to better understand and assess these risks through local solutions and communicate them to citizens. And how are we going to do it? Well, we will combine top-down data, for instance, from satellite observations, with bottom-up citizen science data. And the focus of this service will be on current climate and longer-term annual or decadal forecasts, as opposed to early warnings, which is about days or weeks or months. And we have made this decision because early warnings has much more political space and has already established systems and warnings already provided by national meteorological agencies. So we will start with health impacts from heat, indirect and direct, but also consider broader impacts on energy, transport systems, and other infrastructure. And the service might move towards multi-hazard risk assessment in the future. So what have we done so far? In 2023, this year, we have initiated socializing the project concept and gathering the experts for the first scoping workshop in November. The next thing will be a convening meeting for technical design in the first quarter of 2024. It will be held in person in Geneva. And the goal is to develop technical and non-technical elements of the project. And partners representing service design and provision and users will be invited, including technical experts, intergovernmental agencies, cities and their networks, and private sector organizations, because that's what we do in GEO. We build these bridges for the conversations to happen. And as an outcome, we expect a rapid prototyping of the project concept, the definition of the project work streams, and the mapping of the partners that could contribute to this project. We need to identify roles and responsibilities and develop a project work plan. So it's pretty much in the early stages, but we are open for contributions and would like to invite those who have interest in joining our efforts. At the moment is GEO and WMO, with the participation of WHO, because this is a focus on health. But as I said, the focus might expand later, and we're looking forward to presenting you the next stages later in the new year. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. If you need more information, I would like to invite you to contact my colleague Martin Clark, who's the Urban Resilience Coordinator at the GEO Secretariat. And he will be able to help you, to involve you in the project as you can see fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing this very important initiative by GEO. I think some of the things that you mentioned, one initially, well, of course, quite alarming, that the children born in 2020 will face 7 times more exposure as, compared to the ones earlier. So I think the time to ensure that we leave a secure, future for the coming generations is all the more, understood there. You also mentioned that the heat wave is not the vulnerability to the heat waves is not just confined to the known or risk-prone areas, but is more like expanding to some of the areas which were not hitherto considered being prone to some of those challenges and the risks. They need to understand the heat wave, need to understand and develop heat wave policies, and have a better understanding through the application of technologies is also, highlighted. Great to know that Geo is advancing through GHRS to provide intelligence on the health risks from exposure to heat and to help cities develop plans to adapt to heat and reduce the impacts on health and local economies. We look forward to staying engaged, and I'm sure many of us would continue to pay attention to as the service and that project unfolds over 2024, and happy to support in your endeavors as you want us to. Thank you so much for your time to share the GHRS service with us. So thank you, colleagues. So let's now hear some voices from the cities where action to mitigate and to reduce heat wave and heat line effects has been advanced, has been taken on the ground. Now we understood what needs to be done. Now let's see, how it is being done at the ground level by some of those champions who are already, fighting against this existing and emerging risk before us. We have two speakers from two cities. Let me first invite Ms. Ann Sung-ha, or Susan, who is Deputy Director of Incheon Municipality City in South Korea. She started her work under the UNDRR Incheon office in January 2022 and has supported various events and initiatives for disaster risk reduction as MCR 2030 Resilience Hub City. Since 1992, Susan has worked as a local government official in Incheon City. As part of this position, she has worked on the Citizen Policy Division, Women Policy Division, Incheon Free Economic Zone Authority, International Cooperation Division, and in 2014, she worked in Incheon for the 2014 Para-Asian Games Organizing Committee. So a rich experience from working at the local level across different stakeholders too. So let's hear about these steps that have been taken by the city of Incheon to manage heat waves and to reduce the heat line effects. Ms. Susan, the floor is yours for the next 12 minutes. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to tell you about our city's heat wave action policy for this webinar. My name is An Sung-ah from Incheon Metropolitan City, the Republic of Korea. There are 4 seasons in Korea, but weather is too hot in summer these days. Temperature in Korean Peninsula has increased 0.1 degrees Celsius above global average from pre-industrialization era. CO2 growth rates and concentration levels also exceeding the global average. Over past century, global average temperature has risen by 0.74 degrees Celsius. In last decade, Incheon has experienced 0.6 degrees Celsius increase in its average summer temperature, which now stands at 24.4 degrees Celsius from June to August. In response, my city, Incheon Metropolitan City, has established heat wave countermeasures for summer periods between May and September to protect vulnerable people. City operates emergency system that coordinates the work of various departments, counties, and districts to guide their response, depending on severity of heat wave warning level. Incheon's able to utilize several different heat wave reduction facilities to mitigate heat island phenomenon. The number of such facilities, 2,200, and they are used in an integrated and targeted way. These facilities include smart shade screen and cooling fogs installed in front of crosswalk, as well as 26 water sprinkler trucks to be used to reduce road heat during extreme temperature. In particular, smart shade screen automatically unfold during the day when sunrise and fold at night. Heatwave shelters were closed during COVID-19 pandemic has now been reactivated. This year, total of 1,300 locations were in operation. City provided location information of heatwave shelters to citizens through safety app. The city used big data analysis to target this support to most vulnerable. For instance, this analysis identified areas of the city where surface temperatures are highest, where number of vulnerable families high, and where there's lack of heat shelters nearby. In particular, Incheon City's heat wave measures focused on elderly people living alone. Heat wave impact report by Korea Institute for Environmental Policy Evaluation in 2020 found that low-income households had a higher mortality rate from thermal disease than high-income households, and single-person households than multi-person households. Incheon City is promoting effective measures for vulnerable areas and vulnerable groups by supporting customized heat wave prevention activities based on data. In order to protect vulnerable, including elderly living alone, from heat-related illness, cities initiate heat-safe temporary accommodation project in vulnerable areas with high temperature in 2022. This project offers access to hotel and motels from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. on nights when minimum temperature reaches 25 degrees Celsius or higher in July or August. Senior aged 65 or older and low-income families without air conditioning facilities can use the designated accommodation after applying through community center. In 2022, pilot phase comprised 76 operational performance, and this year, program has grown to encompass total of 126 operational performance. We are providing comprehensive risk information strategy for citizens. For example, special measures to protect outdoor workers, such as construction workers and rice farmers, from negative impact of heat exposure. City distributes self-diagnosis table for outdoor workers to help them preemptively determine any symptoms and take action. Furthermore, we have supplied phones that are interconnected with other IoT devices within households to support emergency situation, ensuring safety of 8,970 low-income elderly individuals living alone. These IoT security points are closely monitored by the city and managed to enhance their well-being. Also, through cooperation with local broadcasting, the local government informs citizens of overall situation and appropriate prevention measures they should take. In addition to broadcast and social media, Incheon City also utilized village broadcast and local disaster message boards to provide such information. Especially, city heads operate smart disaster situation management system for monitoring all disaster such as heat wave. When heat wave warnings are issued, city disseminates heat wave prevention measures to citizens through disaster text message system. Incheon, the sixth city in the world to be recognized as a Making Cities Resilient 2030 Resilience Hub. Part of its commitment as a resilience hub is to keep improving its heatwave management measures and to share its lessons with other cities around the wider world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ann Sunga. Very, excellent work that is being advanced in the Incheon metropolitan city. Great to learn about this, especially your reference to the emergency response systems that have been put in place, the facilities and the shelters that you have, created, especially, keeping in mind the needs of the people who have to be outdoors many a times during the day, and the development of a comprehensive risk information system to disseminate the warnings and the alerts. Really, really excellent work. And let's now move to the other experience from the city of Athens in Greece. So I would like to invite Dr. Elizabeth Bagiani, who is head of the Resilience and Sustainability Department and is the Chief Heat Officer in the city of Athens as part of the city's Strategic Planning, Resilience, and Documentation Division. Over to you, Dr. Elizabeth, to share some of the approaches that you have advanced. And I know that these are quite innovative, so we would definitely, like to learn and hear more, from you. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be in this crowd of people. Well, I've been the Chief Heat Officer for the city of Athens for quite a few months now. Heat is called a silent killer for a reason. It's unlike many other disasters. It's not often visually dramatic. So, however, globally, it's the deadliest meteorological hazard in an average year. And without action to reduce emissions, things are only going to get worse. So in Athens, the city's hottest days are projected to become 3 times more frequent by 2050. So that's a very serious data to consider. From 9 to 10 days in a typical year today to 27. That's a lot. We're already losing 100 million in worker productivity due to heat. And that also is likely to nearly triple in the next 30 years. And with heat comes to a greater likelihood of wildfires and droughts. So the stakes are incredibly high for adapting to these dangerous high temperatures. So the city of Athens has been getting all this data, and we've been making a data decision. We've been driven by data. Our decision has been very, very progressed through the years. So from 2017 at least, we've been part of networks, of city networks like C40. And we've done our first climate action plan, and we recognized heat as the most dangerous climate risk for our city. So now we have updated our climate action plan for 2030. for climate resilience and climate neutrality by 2050, according to the Paris Agreement. And the core of our action is the public open space in relation to inhabitants and visitors, tackling mobility, energy, green spaces issues in a systemic and innovative way. So our goal is to increase the green surfaces of the city of Athens, green and permeable spaces of the city of Athens by 30%, and also give access to at least 70% of our population to spaces within a 15-minute walk from home to all the 7% at least of the population of the city of Athens. But how do we do that? You know, these are my main adaptation goals for the city of Athens, and they're basically heat-related goals. So our climate action plan is very heat-related. It's based on 3 basic pillars, let's say, if we want to simplify it. It's on awareness, it's on preparedness, and it's on redesigning our city. The city of Athens has been doing a lot about awareness and preparedness. We've done a dedicated website called Cool Athens, which I can put on the chat box for people to view, in English and in Greek, for our visitors and residents to view. From simple questions, from simple answers, like how to people that need to get hydrated in hot months, into how to keep your house cool, or how to keep you safe and be with older people and lonely people need to get more being taken care of, into more advanced programs that we run as a city, and it has to do a lot with vulnerable populations. We open cool centers in the city of Athens. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Of course, you can ask me information later, but I'm just going to go through the spectrum of actions that we do. We run a dedicated helpline. We work closely with the Red Cross, and they've given us seminars for our health, for our social and health departments in order for our people to be able to offer to back to our citizens. And also, we've been running programs for people who stay at the street, vulnerable drug users, homeless people, and we do street work for those people in order to protect them from the heat. We also run a dedicated platform that it's called the Extrema Global App, and it's a mobile application with real-time information on the temperature and heat class of the day, with corresponding precautions that need to be thinking of. Having said that, we have run a year back a categorization of heat waves, which was really important for us. We've recognized, with the cooperation with our Stroke Resilience Center, the National Observatory of Athens, scientists and ourselves, we collected data of 20 years back from the Statistical Service of Greece that have to do with mortality data of people during the heat waves in the city of Athens. And an algorithm was created especially for the city of Athens, taking also into account some meteorological data, let's say, such as temperature, humidity, wind, etc. So we have a prediction heat wave system that we use in order to mobilize our internal services when the heat waves are coming. So we can see if category number 0 is the lowest one, and category number 3 is the most dangerous heat wave categorization we've got, and we need to have extra precautions taken inside our city. Also, this application, the Extrema Global application that I told you about, it does give information about which categorization of the heat wave we are in, and also provides information for visitors and people on how to go from A to B on a coolest route. We've put up our trees, our shaded avenue trees, three shaded avenues of the city of Athens, about 94,000 trees in the city context, in the streets, in the squares. And we also, we given the opportunity, apart from telling the people which parks, where the parks are, where the cool places are, where the cool spots are, you know, we also, where the taps or the fountains of the city are, we tell them how to be navigated from one point to the other in a more shaded and cooler route. I think that has to do a lot with our technology, but I'll also, I would like to, I know I don't have a lot of time, I will just go back to the redesigning of the city, that because all what we said now it was about awareness and preparedness. What I really want to say, because I'm also a landscape architect, I'm a trained landscape architect, I would like to state that it has been a very, very great focus for us to put together the green spaces, the effect of green and blue spaces for the city, about cooling down the temperatures of the city. So it's very, very clear in our action and our strategy to increase the green and the blue spaces of the city of Athens, from small pocket parks to big, large green spaces, create metropolitan, local and neighborhood green routes, which we have been doing a lot and will be doing a lot in the next few years. The availability of space is not great in the city of Athens because it's a very densely built and very densely populated city, for those who don't know. So the lack of available space is a big problem. So combining mobility with green spaces is the key in our case. You know, we have to be clever about how we treat our streets. We have to be thoughtful all the time about this. Okay, thank you. My time is off. Is up. Is that what you said?
2 more minutes, please.
Oh, okay. Yes, sorry. Yeah. You said stop. Okay. So yes, and the last thing I would like to say is that there has been a great progress in Athens through the years, as there has been a lot of groundwork and on awareness and preparedness, and by setting up strategies and plans in the city, allows us to have access to funds that otherwise we would not be able to access in order to implement action. That's very important for all cities to hear, I think, because it has been the key. It has been a power for us. It's fascinating to be working in a city because you can see the practicalities of things. You can assess what can be done and what's not under the current framework and responsibilities cities have, which is quite a few. So as climate is becoming more of an umbrella to our actions through EU, national, and our own local goals, you notice much more mainstreaming among stakeholders who traditionally, in the past, were not sitting around the same table discussing about things they share in common and do not necessarily share the same legal responsibility to respond. But through this climate crisis, we see a change. You know, it's a global challenge, and Athens is uniquely positioned to move forward the conversation on a global scale, on a broader network of cities and initiatives that are on the front line, addressing rising temperatures and climate change. Through our participation, let's say, in EU programs that we currently run in the city, one is called Reach Out, the other one is called Arsinoe. We have created the climate story for the city of Athens, which has been an exceptionally useful tool for awareness for our citizens. and also combining socioeconomic data for vulnerable communities in order to move to action into these communities regarding heat. Okay, done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth. I mean, very impressive to say the least. I mean, we would love to hear more about the great work that you and your team are doing in the city of Athens. Your description of heat waves as a silent killer is really apt. I think it's right on dot. And the approach that you outlined in the 3 pillars that you spoke about, awareness, preparedness, and redesign of the city, and some of the, I mean, a tremendously innovative initiative that you have already started off, like a dedicated helpline, uh, focus on the homeless people, the platform, mobile-based alerts for the heat temperatures, and of course, some of those really smart things about giving information about the coolest routes to take when one is moving from, point A to B in the city. And of course, your vision to increase the green spaces by 30% in the city. That's quite great work there. So once again, compliments to you and the team. We would love to hear more about it over times. And I'm sure we will share that website, Cool Athens, also in the chat so that people can have a look and learn from your experiences. So thank you so much. Thanks all panelists and speakers for today. Let's open the floor for a discussion since we just have a little bit more time to finish off the webinar. Thanks a lot again. Maybe I would request all the panelists and the speakers to put on their cameras so that they are visible to the participants, and the questions posed can be shared with them for a response. There are 2 questions for Ainur. Let me start off with them. Is there any civil society action vis-a-vis heat resilience that you can refer to here, for the benefit of our audience? And second, people would also like to know, can we correlate the melting of ice in the mountains, with the increasing heat waves? Any thoughts, any ideas by any of the panelists or the speakers? But first, of course, to Ms. Ainur.
Okay, interesting questions. I mean, I kind of talked about the actions that Red Cross, Red Crescent branches are doing with the communities and the city. I think this is a great example of civil action, since we, like many other NGOs or community-based organizations, we think we represent the civil society, but there is a lot more that can be done. I think that I take the question in that way. Yes, there is a lot that can be done, because many of the panelists mentioned that there is certain actions that cities are doing and can do and should be doing, but when it comes to people and how they can protect themselves, we need to start thinking about like how we can empower communities with the knowledge, and they need to understand that they are at risk. There was an interesting comment in the chat I just came across, is that I mentioned that in tropical and hot countries, the heat is not conceived as a risk, but it's exactly the same in very cold countries too, because they're not used to it. They don't think of it. They tend to think of people, it's just one-time event, but their thresholds are very different. So then we again come back to understanding the heat thresholds. Like it's very different for every country, for different age groups, for different health conditions. So these are all calls for more information, more research, so that we know who and how and when is impacted. And I agree, civil action is very, very important, because we can do a lot helping other people, and in addition to helping ourselves. For the other questions, I don't think I'm in a position to answer. We need a scientist to answer that. So I will skip that one. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Miss Sarah, anything, with respond to that, question? Any linkages that you see between the melting of the ice and the increasing heat waves?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is all part of the global climate impacts, and mountains are particularly vulnerable. And most importantly, the communities are remote. It's hard to monitor those changes. And that's why in GEO we have a dedicated initiative called GEO Mountains that provides Earth observation information on those changes in mountain regions. And this information, this data from satellite, from citizen science, from drones, from all the Earth observation feed into research, climate models, and climate services, including possibly those on heat waves. So it is possible to create early warning system also in the mountains if a local government wishes to do so, because the information is there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we don't have too many, questions in the chat, though, of course, we see from the comments that the presentations and the information shared has been excellently useful, very well, taken. So for the benefit of all of our friends and colleagues joining us today, so thanks again. UNDP and UNDRR, we are developing and advancing action, around an integrated urban resilience initiative. We will be addressing multiple hazards, including heat waves, as part of the initiative that we are about to launch in 2024. We definitely look forward to working closely with many partners, stakeholders, because it is, as mentioned by numerous speakers, it is a coordinated action that we need to take and not standalone. Another input to be shared here, could be the kind of processes and the changes that we are witnessing vis-a-vis climate change. None of the hazards and the risks that we face today or are likely to manifest over time will not be standalone. These are all interconnected and mutually reinforcing. So one, having direct or an indirect impact on aggravating the other is likely scenario that we are stepping towards. And of course, if we are, speaking about urban context, where many of these risks and challenges, tend to intersect and, aggravate each other, is like a common, understanding even, today also. So we need action across science, across development, arena, along technologies, along civil society action, and of course, with cities being on the front lines of this action. So thank you again. We will be sharing the recording and all these presentations, with you soon. Thanks again. Thanks for staying engaged. Wishing you happy holidays, happy end of the year, and a very joyful beginning to the new year, with more joined up actions, more such webinar series, and we look forward to having you, with us again over time. So I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all our speakers and panelists for sparing time at a very short notice also, just 1 day, 2 days ago that we started, reaching out to you. So thanks a lot for your, kind accommodation and indulgence there. So thank you so much. Thanks also to UNDRR team who have been helping us behind the scenes to organize this. They are not, too visible on the screen, but they do all the heavy lifting here. So thank you so much. All the best. Stay well, stay safe, and look forward to seeing you again in 2024. All the best. Bye.